I'm Mary Crowley, and this is Mostly Arts. Today my guest is Cathy Archer, who is the theater teacher at Rutland High School and at Rutland Middle School. Cathy, we're here to talk about summer camps at the Chaffee, but before we do that, I think it would be interesting for everybody to learn what you do at the high school.
I teach theater. I'm one of the few high school teachers in Vermont that all I teach is theater.
That's wonderful.
So, and been doing it for a long time. I teach at the middle school, I teach unified theater, and I teach digital, I teach theater, and it's all about stories. And at the high school, I teach musical theater, and I teach introduction to acting and backstage, and I teach stagecraft and design.
Okay, could you break down each one of those, for instance, each one of those classes that are offered?
Musical theater, we learn about the different kinds of theater, musical theater, different kinds of shows, and I have a choreographer that comes in and teaches them a dance, and we do singing, and
so they do dance?
They do dance. My class, this is the first time I'd ever taught it this year. And we took a scene from In the Heights, which is an ensemble piece. It's at the beginning of the
Right.
play. We talked about ensemble. We talked about the different characters and how you have to be in character even when you're dancing. And they basically kept working on that. It was a process. We're not performing for anybody other than, like me.
Right.
And so that's what we did in musical theater.
But you're teaching the idea of what it is to be in a production.
Yes.
And be
Yes.
a different character
Absolutely.
from what each one of them is
Absolutely.
in real life.
And the importance of, okay, as a character, what was I doing before I came on stage?
Right.
Where am I going after I get off stage?
Right.
What is my relationship to the other people on stage? And what's the story I'm telling? Because the ultimate purpose of theater is to tell a story.
Yes.
So what's the story?
We love our stories, don't we?
Yes, we do.
No matter what they are.
And then introduction to acting and backstage, the aim is to put on a production. It often doesn't, in 8 weeks, sometimes it doesn't work. But the class I had this year worked with a bullying script, and they created the set, and they developed the costumes, and they were the actors, because it was a small class. And we did do a video of it, but we weren't able to get it together to bring a class in to see it. And that's my goal.
You said your class was small. Are your classes generally small?
This year they have been, although...
What does small mean?
That class, there were 6.
Nice.
Musical theater was 14, 15.
Lovely.
That was pretty much the biggest.
Right.
And my stagecraft and design classes were anywhere from 6 to 10.
Okay.
And the stagecraft and design is designed for those people who say, I don't like theater, I don't want to get on stage, I'm terrified. You don't have to get on stage. There are many, many things to do in theater that have
Right.
nothing to do with being on stage.
Right.
So I teach them the stories through set design, costume design, lighting design, sound design when we have time. It's a hands-on class, so they develop the design for the set, and then they create a model. And then their final project is what I call the hot set, which is a mini set, and they actually create their set. And they get to paint things, and they get to build things. We use a lot of cardboard.
Okay. All right.
So they've created cardboard tables and cardboard chairs, and then they talk about. I'm very lucky. I have Susan Hafner, who is from an actress and a producer and a director, and she comes to talk to the kids. And
Where does she work?
She all over.
Okay, all right.
She works at Weston. She recently was Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast at Northern Stage.
Nice.
And my students got to see the show.
All right, so she works in Vermont at different theaters.
She works in Vermont, but she also works in Connecticut and Florida and
all right.
all over.
That's lovely.
So they have that opportunity to talk to her as a producer. Like, would you produce this show? They take a story that has not been turned into a live production, and they take that story and what would it look like if Inside Out was put on a live stage?
Okay.
What would it look like if Surf's Up was taken? And sometimes it's a book, and sometimes it's a historical event. It's what the students choose, what they want to explore. and what story they want to tell.
So you must talk ahead of time about what they want, what their particular likes are. When it
We
comes
do
to
at the
stories.
beginning. At the beginning, we talk about stories. We talk a lot about stories the very first days, and it's really tough because kids don't read anymore, and kids
I
don't
have
watch
read
movies
that.
and
Yes.
kids don't watch movies, and they watch TikTok, and they watch, mini movies or whatever they are. So sometimes it's really hard for them to find a story, and so I'll say, okay, do you play video games? A lot of video games are stories. So what would happen? I had a student this last quarter who imagined what it would be like if you turned Halo into a live theater production.
Okay.
So I go
So you're
wherever.
working with the student population you have.
I go with whatever and then point out, because a lot of times they'll say, oh, it's just fun. And then I'll say, well, what's the real message? What's the story here? And then they start thinking about it and they go,
Right.
oh, it's about finding yourself, or oh, it's about peace on earth, or oh, it's about, whatever. There's always almost always,
A theme.
except for Tom and Jerry, which I always say, no, you can't do Tom and Jerry. I'm sorry, there's no story there. It's just a cat chasing a mouse, and that's it. So no.
Okay. All right. Well, you are obviously passionate about what you do with the older students, high school students. This summer at the Cathy Archer Center, you're going to be offering summer camps for ages 6 or 7 to 12.
Yes.
So that's another population, essentially. So let's talk about each of your offerings. Act, Create, Perform, June 7, 14, 21, Saturdays, 3 Saturdays in a row, 10 to 12:30, ages 7 to 12. What will you do in that?
Well, we're going to start with a story. There is a story called The Three Sillies, which is an old folk tale. And I am a storyteller, as you know,
Yes.
and I've done storytelling shows, and I will start by telling them the story. And then I'll say, okay, how are we going to act this out? Who wants to
Can you
play
give us
this?
just a little bit of the beginning of the story?
Well, it seems that there was this young man who was in love with this young woman, and he was going to marry her. And he came to her house for dinner one night, and she was asked to go downstairs into the basement to get some cider. And when she got downstairs, and she took the spigot and put the jar underneath, and she happened to look up. And when she looked up, she saw an axe stuck in the ceiling. Now, she looked up and she thought, oh, what if that axe fell and hit me in the head and I died and I was never able to marry my love? And she started crying.
Of course.
And the cider was going all over the place. And so upstairs, they're still waiting for her to come back, and I won't tell you the rest of the story.
No, I'm into it.
Yeah.
You've gotten
But
me
things
interested.
do not end well. Well, things do end well, but it takes
All right,
a
so
while.
you'll be working with that.
Yes, we will start
Okay.
with that story, and then we will talk about how we can act it out. Using the Cathy, we will actually act out the story in 3 different rooms, because there are 3 different locations where the story takes place, and 3
Oh, okay.
sillies. So
All
they
right.
will have. So the audience, and this is something that's happening a lot in theater, interactive theater, where people move from room to, instead of sitting and watching a show, the actors move to another room, or there are other actors in another room acting out, and
Okay.
they will move from,
All right.
the audience will move from room to room. We'll see how
Okay,
it works.
and so you intend to have an audience?
Yes. they're
Each Saturday or just the last
just
Saturday?
the last Saturday.
The last Saturday.
The parents can come, and
Okay.
anybody, grandma, grandpa,
Right.
aunt, uncle, anybody that wants to
Right.
come along. We'll see how it goes.
All right, so you've got the story for that one.
Yes.
All right. And will there be costumes?
There will be costumes. They will come up with costumes. I have a huge costume shop at the high school, from which I will drag out some
Oh,
stuff.
interesting. Okay.
Where I know where where stuff is.
Right.
And I have some other things that I can bring in. There's small pieces for set
Okay.
and stuff like that. Yeah. And sometimes, and they may make stuff too.
Okay.
We will make being fabric, and we can wrap fabric around and play.
It's a creative venture.
Yes.
Absolutely. Everything. All right. Then the next one is theater improv, July 7 to 11. That's Monday through Friday.
Yes.
And ages 6 to 12.
Yep.
And again, that's a wide span.
Yeah.
Which is great to get some younger children involved in theater.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Right. Now, what is theater improv? Now, that's 5 days.
Yes.
So
And
that's longer.
yes. Improv is you're thinking on your feet, you're coming up with the story as you go along, kind of like what we're doing. I mean, we're kind of improving because
I guess so.
we
Yeah.
talked a little bit
Right.
about what, but I'm making it up.
Right, exactly.
The improv, there's different types of improv. There's short form, which is a real quick scene, and then there's long form, which is where you improvise a whole story. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a regular story, only you never write it down. You don't ever,
But then you have to have a story to start with. So how do you get the story to improvise with?
We will come up with it. We'll start with, we might start with characters. I'll kind of see where they are. Then we might start with a story that they know and say, would you like to do Goldilocks and the Three Bears or the Three Pigs? Or we might start with an idea. What's something that you care about, something that you're interested in?
How about if I want to be an astronaut?
Okay.
I mean, this just came out of the blue
Yes,
in my mind.
right. So
But-
if you want to be, somebody says, hey, I want to be an astronaut. I'm really interested in space. So
and maybe the others would go along with it.
And
So
maybe,
we'd
and
all,
so we would write that down. We would say, okay, space. Well, what about space? Well, I'm interested in aliens, and we would come
Okay.
up with, and somebody else might say, I'm interested in oceans. I love mermaids. So we write that down, and then through
So you
consensus,
brainstorm
we
first.
brainstorm. We do a lot of
Yeah.
brainstorming, and then once we get the basic idea, we start brainstorming again. Okay, who are the characters? Where does it take place? And as we're brainstorming, we'll go, okay, so the beginning of the play, well, it sounds like it's going to have 3 mermaids and a shark. I don't know. And
Right.
so so let's try it out. Let's see what happens when 3 mermaids and a shark meet in the ocean. So we'll do a scene, we'll say, and then we'll write that down. Or it might not go anywhere. And we say, well, that didn't really go anywhere, so let's try something else.
Okay.
So it just keeps, hopefully the goal is to have the story sometime around, like by the end of Tuesday or Wednesday, at the beginning of Wednesday, where you really have the story, you have the
All right,
outline of the story.
good.
And then we start
then-
making costumes and then and continuing to develop the story.
and so you would go to your costume collection then?
Oh, of course.
All right.
But I'd also see what they
Would
they
you
might want
bring
to bring
in?
something in. Yeah. Yeah.
And they might have something at home.
And they might have something at home, or I might have some fabric and play around with the fabric.
They might
and-
have a Halloween costume left over that they could use.
We might.
All right.
This is the whole, this method is how many years ago we had summer encore. I did summer encore and we traveled the state, and my students would develop the story based on the theme the reading theme for the library that year,
Okay.
whatever it was.
All
And
right.
that's how we would start. Okay, the theme is this. What are we going to do with it? And then we would develop, the students would develop the play. We took 3 weeks to develop the play, but it was a finished product that was
Okay,
actually being
right.
performed for all over the state. I mean, we performed literally all over the state. We went up as far north as, I think we were in
You
Norwich
needed
once.
financing for that. How could you do that?
When we first started, it was all through the libraries paid us.
Ah.
I didn't take any money.
Okay, all right.
And then we started doing it through Epic. The last few years we did it through Epic. So Epic. it
I
was
don't know what
fun.
Epic is.
Epic is the after-school program that's funded
okay,
through
I
a
have,
federal
yes.
grant. So yeah, we were funded that way. We had a
So
designated
you were still
frustrator.
working within the framework of the Rutland City Public Schools?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
all right. All right, well, that sounds like a creative venture. I mean, you have to be open to
Yep.
whatever the group wants, and you have to make your own lines.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, which is different from being in a play where you're handed the lines.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
You don't get handed the lines. You
No.
you make them up, and you may make that one line up today, and when you do the show tomorrow, it might change.
Right,
Because you're
exactly.
going to change. Because
Right.
you're really going to have to really listen to each other.
Right,
And so you're
I was
really
just thinking
listening
that,
and
right,
responding.
yeah.
You can't just kind of go, okay, I remember. All I have to do is respond to the cue line. No, because it might not be the same cue
Right.
line, or it might not be said the same way, or you might not interpret it the same way as you did yesterday.
Okay, active listening,
Active
for sure.
listening. Yes.
All right, then puppets, puppets, puppets.
Yes.
July 21st, 22nd, 23rd, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 to 12 a.m., ages 6 to 12.
Yes.
All right, and you brought...
I brought, so every student that comes will get one of these, and this is what it's going to look like. It's
Right.
just a blank. And again, we'll kind of go through what's the story going to be about, and then they'll design a puppet, and then we will design a puppet, and we will learn about how do you come up, and then I don't know yet.
And can you manipulate that puppet in front of you so that it
So
it
you
gets,
learn how to wave, and you
good.
learn how to nod and bow, and you learn how to walk.
All right.
And there's my dyslexic, I can't. And you learn how to appear. And
All right,
learn
you
how
can
to
do all
go.
kinds of things
You can
just
do
with that one simple...
Yes, one simple puppet. And you also have to talk for the puppet. So, hello, how are you? Are you having a good day today?
Very convincing.
So there's all kinds of
She's a
things that
happy
the
puppet.
students will learn. Yes, she's a very happy puppet.
Right. And do you want to show the ones that the students have done?
Okay, so these were done by my Unified Theater class. So we have this guy, this woman. We were doing an actual story, and I should remember what the story was, but we've done several. The students really like the puppets, and this one has hearts for eyes.
Right, and a different kind of mouth.
Yep. And sometimes we use fabric for the clothing, and I will bring clothing. This one, obviously, I had some yarn,
right.
and hot glue, which was rapidly put on.
All right.
So,
in the puppets, do you have a particular play in mind?
no.
Okay, again, will you, it'll be
It'll
like
be
a
what the
piece of
kids,
improv theater?
It'll be improv theater. It'll
Okay.
be what the kids come up with. It'll be, if I find, because it's shorter.
Right.
If I find that we get bogged down, and like say in the first hour we haven't got any ideas, I'll start floating some ideas, and I also may add in some. I'm not sure what the reading theme is for library. I knew once, but
Okay.
I've been doing
All
so
right.
many other things. But I will look at that and see if we can tie it into that. And I have a puppet stage that...
That's what I was wondering. You do?
I have a puppet stage that it
Okay.
actually fits in a door.
Ah,
So you can just put it in the door, and then I have figured out how to make backdrops for it. So that's another thing that the students do, is we make
so
backdrops.
essentially sets.
Yeah, sets, and it's very simple. And if this is something that a lot of people take or a lot of people are interested in, I do have a bigger puppet stage that if I was going to do it again, I would bring out the bigger puppet stage, but then
Okay.
I've got to figure out where we're going to put it and stuff. My technical director, David Lane, built it. It's all out of PVC pipe, so you can take it apart and put it together, and it's got curtains on all sides.
Wow.
It's really cool. It's also actually, now that it's labeled, and hopefully nothing has happened to the labels,
Okay.
it's easy to put together.
Right.
You need a mallet, and you need to keep looking at the picture to sort of figure
All
it out.
right, so it's either a small puppet stage or a
Yeah,
larger
we're going
one.
to do the small puppet stage for this, and then we'll see where it goes.
Okay. I would love to do that.
It's a lot of fun.
All right.
Maybe
so,
I should do a senior puppet show.
Maybe
workshop
so.
Thing.
Art, Create, Perform in June. And, just in June. Theater, improv in July, puppets in July.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about your personal bio. When did you become interested in theater or teaching?
Pretty much forever. There was a short, brief period in my life when I wanted to be a nurse. Like I was about 5 or 6, and then I found out you had to deal with blood.
Yes.
And that was like
right.
cross that off.
Right,
There was
right.
no way.
Did you have a chance to be a part of theater as a child?
Not anything other than my own. I did theater,
Oh.
and actually, When I was very young, when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I had a house, one of those wooden houses in the back of your yard, you know. And mainly I did teaching. I was going to be a teacher. I was always going to be a teacher.
Why were you always going to be a teacher?
I loved kids. Even when I was little, I loved trying to help teach other kids. Also, it's in my blood. My aunt, my mother's sister, was a reading teacher, and I actually got to work with her when I was in my student teaching years. My great aunt was a home economics back then. She used to go up into the Appalachian Mountains and teach the people that lived up there.
Interesting.
And home ec and cooking and all of that. Everybody in my family were educators. So it's like,
so that was,
my grandmother was in it, you know, like you couldn't escape it. So
you knew what you wanted to do
I always
early.
wanted to be a
great.
teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. And when I was in high school, I had a very strange high school because unlike high schools, a lot of high schools today, and even now I think it's true there, football wasn't the big thing. You know, it was, people played football, but the in thing to do in Briarcliff, New York was to be in theater. And so
that's quite wonderful,
yeah,
for somebody with your interest.
So it was like, oh, cool.
Right.
And this was my people. This is, you know, I found them, and I mean, we also had an opera club. We went into We went into New York City to watch Metropolitan Opera rehearsals.
That's amazing.
Part of the opera club. And so we only did one show a year, which was, you know, like not a lot. But then when I went to college, I studied theater. You know,
back to high school. Were you in plays?
Yes, I was in
musicals or straight dramas or what?
We did not do any musicals. We did straight plays. My senior year, I think, we did The Crucible, and I played Rebecca Nurse. And a good friend of mine was John Proctor. And then, like I said, then I went on to, you know, high school, there wasn't a ton of theater. I did do a summer theater program that we did a play for children that was a audience participation play. And we brought kids up onto the stage with us. And that was a whole summer of acting and playing with a group of people.
Was that something the school system offered?
It was, Briarcliff is a bedroom community of New York City, and so there's a whole lot of arts and things. And it wasn't through Briarcliff, it was one of the other, but it was close enough that I could get there and do it, you know. And then we traveled around and toured the show, and so.
So then college.
Then college.
What happened there?
I immediately joined the theater program, which was called.
And where did you go to college?
Hartwick College in Oneonta, New York.
Okay.
And I got involved in what was called Cardboard Alley. Our theater.
What is that?
That was the theater. That was the kind of after classes theater program. We didn't have a huge theater classes when I was there. It's now Burgoyne. It's a major. I don't believe it was a major then.
Okay.
But it was a great group of people, and we did all kinds of shows, and we did do musicals, and I was in Carnival, which was a fun show, and I played the little girl with the lollipop. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can tell, I always looked younger than I was. When I started college, I looked about 13. So I always got these parts where, you can play the little girl. Oh, cool. That's great. Why? So, you know, and then I started my math. When I graduated, there were no teaching jobs. I mean, I was going to be a teacher. I was not going to go into theater. I was going to do theater for fun. But I couldn't get a teaching job. So if you can't get a teaching job, go major in theater, because obviously there's going to be jobs in theater. I don't know what planet I was on when I was thinking that. But anyway, I went to NYU for their educational theater program, studied in England for a summer. Again, the educational theater, we actually performed.
That sounds very exciting.
Performed on the beach of Scarborough Sea. We pop-up theater.
Okay.
And then went to West Virginia University and finished my degree there. And that's where I got involved in puppets. My husband and I both took puppetry with this very crazy puppet lady, and we traveled all over Monongahela County, which is where Morgantown is, and did puppets and wrote our own puppet plays. And I started a children's theater, troupe called Wandering Wardrobe while I was
That's
in
fun.
West Virginia. It was great fun, and then there was a coal strike, and all the buildings that would be holding theater productions closed, so we didn't do real well.
And is that when you moved to Vermont?
Then we moved to Vermont. My husband was a native Vermonter and was not going to live in West Virginia. I was not going to raise my children in West Virginia, where you could still paddle children in school.
Okay.
So I came to Vermont, tried out on a whim.
With your theater degree.
Yes. Tried out on a whim, West Side Story. Got a part as the riff dummy, so I got to stand very, very still, which was fun. That was done in the behind the Paramount in, what is it called? The
Center Street Alley,
Center
maybe?
Street
I
Alley.
don't know.
I don't remember. Anyway, so, and while I was in the show, somebody said, hey, you have a degree in theater? And I said, yes. And they said, well, Otter Valley needs a theater teacher. And I went to the interview, and being a good actress, I said, yes, I can direct a musical, which I'd never done before. Yes, I can teach theater, which I'd never done before. And they said, oh, we've got all kinds of materials, everything will be great. And long story short, I got the job.
But you had a master's in theater. I mean,
yes, but I'd never actually, I hadn't taught I hadn't taught teaching teenagers was not, I mean, if anybody had told me you are going to teach teenagers when I was, in high school or college, I would have said you're crazy.
Right.
It was elementary ed all the way.
Right.
And so so I went and I did it, and we chose the Music Man. I found out I was pregnant with my first child. I directed the Music Man, I taught theater, and I was pregnant with my first kid.
Okay. Well, and there's more even, but we're running out of time.
We're running out of time.
So let's talk about the spring production at the high school.
The spring production at the high school is called Lost in Time. It was written by our new technical director, Cade Landsman, and when he was in high school, and the kids, he presented it to the kids, and the kids loved it, but they wanted to rewrite it and to help him rewrite it. So so now it's written by him and some of my students.
Okay.
And it is about a person who is in a submarine during the World War II, and he is dying because there's no food, there's no water, and there's no way the submarine is not going anywhere. So his friend Elliot comes and takes him through his life, parts of his life that were important. And the ultimate message is acceptance and peace with death.
So the triumph of the human spirit?
Yeah, the triumph of the human spirit,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And it's a real challenge for the young man who is stuck on the submarine.
Right.
We're trying to create a set so that it will be very clear that he's captured or he's in this tight space where he can't move around, but then he can come up for the memories, and then
Okay.
So.
All right, and then year-end studies. Yes plan.
Yes.
What year-end studies, what is that?
It allows teachers to teach things that they don't get to teach during the rest of the year.
I remember
knitting,
well.
maybe, and it allows kids to take something that they haven't, maybe they think they're interested in, but they haven't ever taken a class, so they're trying it out. So our Yes Plan, in the morning, I have a student who's been studying directing, and she's going to direct me in a one-woman show, monologue, something, and the other students will create the set and the costumes.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, there are 17 kids, and there are some actors. The actors will act, the other people will do backstage, and we'll come up with productions that will be a part of an evening of theater with Lost in Time. We are also working with the middle school. The middle school kids are going to be involved as well.
Oh, that's
who are
great.
doing theater at the middle school for their year-end studies. So we're.
And will that happen at the high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. It sounds wonderful, and you sound as if you're so happy.
I am.
With the work that you do.
I am.
And, yeah, it's great. You found your place early.
Yes. It
fell into place.
Fell into place, all except for the teenagers part. That was accidental.
Well,
but I love them.
It must be all right.
I do. I love the kids. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay.
I really wouldn't.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.